you did a great job Sunday, but there was a few things that I was making notes, and I said, well, he didn't make it. He went all around it, and I thought, okay, I'll make a note, and maybe I'll bring it up, and you either go, wow, or you go, no, that's not right. So anyway, Cyrus was, I don't know, esteemed with the Jews. Even to this day, they're esteemed. Cyrus is esteemed. He is especially esteemed in Iran, of all places, because this is where his country, Iran, was the country where he, back in the 600s before BC, that's where his country, his empire was part of Iran, or Iran was part of his country. And that's where he buried in Iran. The tomb is still there. They think it's his tomb. And they're not sure if there's anything inside there. I don't think there is now. But so he's very high ranking. You know, they said that people make what's the word I'm looking for? They make trips every year.
Pilgrimage.
Pilgrimage, yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. Oh, brain's a little fried. Pilgrimages, the Iranian people, they make pilgrimages there to his tomb to honor him on a yearly basis. They have yes, he's a big deal over there, even to this day. I would look into stuff and I thought, surely I can find some kind of rock that I can turn over and find something Greg didn't find. You know, and I found something you didn't mention. I don't even, it's so far-fetched, it's almost unbelievable. But a Jewish rabbi, and it was on the internet. He was from the Sanhedrin. I didn't think we still had a Sanhedrin, but anyway, of Mount Zion, a rabbi, I guess he's over in Israel, I'm not sure. But he has concluded, or done some research, and concluded that who was Esther's cousin? Mordecai. Mordecai and Zoroastus, what was the Zoroaster, are the same guy.
Zoroastrian is a religion.
The guy that started Zoroaster was the original prophet that led, that Cyrus has kind of got him, led him into this one God, the monotheistic religion. They're saying that Mordecai was that man. I had to read this thing 3 or 4 times, and he's got all the answers, and he's written a letter to the Iranians saying, look, we were allies at one time because your king, Cyrus, back in the day, freed our people. We were allies at one time. We need to be allies again. You can't win this war without God. That's basically, in a nutshell, what he said. He told them, you need to believe in the one true God as your king Cyrus did back in the day, and you'll never win this war without God, which I can agree with him, but the fact he just come and so Cyrus is still a big deal, even to this day. I think that was written about 2 weeks ago. Probably why you didn't find it. I read the thing 3 times. I said, that's crazy. And he had all the biblical names of Esther. What was her Jewish name? Was it Hadassah? Something. But what they got her name in the Cyrus's, the whatever her name, the Persians, it matches up. This is her. And then they've got a name for Mordecai. This is him. They've got the name for Haman. They got all the fingers and they say this is, and they say it's a parallel religion. They say that Mordecai started this. They're trying to bring people to God, and they kind of got off on a diversion. But anyway, I thought that shows how big Cyrus is still honored even to this day with the Jews and with the Iranians. And if we had Persians, we'd have Persians. It would be the same thing. So that was one of the things I found in that little rock. I finally found one. But I don't even know, it's so crazy to think about that, Mordecai was actually the one that started that religion. Anyway, but the thing that I wrote down Sunday while you were doing it, doing the class, talking about Cyrus and Jesus. I started out with Cyrus and Jesus, comparing the two. But then I expanded it some. Moses, David, Cyrus, and Jesus. You know where I'm going, aren't you? All of them, well, 3 of them were shepherds. One of them was called a shepherd. All of them were shepherds. David was a shepherd. I'm going to say that Cyrus was a shepherd, considering he was thrown out and picked up by shepherds, basically adopted by shepherds and raised. So he had, if you're on the farm, you're not going to sit down and do nothing, kid. You're going to get up and go watch the sheep. You're going to be a shepherd whether you like it or not. So I almost guarantee you, Cyrus was a shepherd at one time in his life when he was growing up. Moses was a shepherd. He watched after his father-in-law's sheep. David was definitely a shepherd. Jesus is called the Good Shepherd. So there's a, okay. All of them, I would say, well, Jesus and Cyrus are both called saviors, Savior of Israel. But I would go out on a limb here and say that Moses and David were also, in a sense, a Savior of Israel. Both Jesus and Cyrus are sought after by a king in charge. David was sought after by a king in charge. Moses was sought after by a king in charge. You always said if it's weird, it points to Jesus. And I thought this, yeah.
No, it's not.
Well, I started putting things together, and I thought, well, all these guys, they have something in common. They freed people from slavery. And then Cyrus and Jesus both sent to save Israel. So I just thought, and there's just too many coincidences, too many things that they have in common. I said, there's got to be something there. Maybe I missed it. Maybe I didn't get it all. But Moses, David, Cyrus, and Jesus, they're all got things in common. And ultimately, Jesus, is our shepherd. He is our Savior. He is, sought after by a king. We hope we didn't be seeking after him. But anyway, that was one of the things that it just caught me. I think you're going to bring that up, but you didn't.
No.
So I said, well, I'm going to make a note of it, and we're going to start there for Wednesday night. Okay, let's see. In fact, when was the book of Isaiah written about?
700 years before.
700, maybe. Okay, they said 8th century. I guess that would be 700s. And when was Cyrus king? 600,
About 100 years later.
100 years later. So that's about like, say, if Abraham Lincoln had written a letter that Greg Bell was going to be preaching in court in 2026, that'd make it just about the same kind of coincidental. Call you by name and tell you what you're going to be doing 100 years later.
Right.
And that would say, well, that's just okay. No big deal. That happens all the time. That's the same thing with God saying, Isaiah, write this down. Cyrus is his name. I'm going to lead him. He's going to bring our people back. What's the chances of that happening? Call him by name and tell him what he's going to do. And he did it 100 years later. And that's where the Jews, that makes it so, and it's something we should look at too and realize how good, how great it makes God look, and how great it proclaims God to be. The fact that he can do that, and that's like twiddling his thumbs to him. That's like small stuff. But still, that's the same thing with somebody writing a letter 100 years ago, stating this is going to happen word for word, names and everything, dates, and it happens. It's just hard to grasp, but God does that kind of thing. Okay, believe that's all the things I had brought up, I wanted to bring up.
Did we bring up the Cyrus cylinder? I'd ask you that today.
Are we doing what?
But did we bring up the, I don't think you brought that up.
We didn't say a lot about it.
One of the things I found out is that there's a lot of controversy because the Cyrus cylinder, Cyrus says that it was his god, Moloch or whatever it is, that is the one that stirred him up to to treat the people better. But in Ezra it says that it's God who stirred him up. And one of the things about this cylinder that I didn't realize, I started going and finding out more about cylinders. There's a number of these that have been found in foundations. And they weren't made for people to read. They were made for the gods. What happened is when they put up these huge buildings, that's why they find so many of them in the corner. It's usually the northeast corner, I think, whatever. They actually bury them right in the ground next to the corner of the cornerstone where they're building, and it's for the gods. And it's usually a boast, how great you are, Moloch, whatever, and here's what I did under your name and all that. And so there's been a number of them found, and they're usually found in, they're called foundation cylinders, and that's what this is. But there's a lot of, Cyrus was one of the few people that even talked about the Jews, that would how good he was to them, and the fact that it was Cyrus. If it hadn't been for Cyrus the king giving all of this information, but I think God stirred him up to do it, that they would have never been able to finish their building because all of these people, all the people all around about him, kept trying to stop them. And finally, they said, "Wait a minute, go back and see what Cyrus told us." And they did, and it ended up that they continued on and built this temple.
Yeah, and he did release a lot of people, send a lot of, they had freedom of religion. That was a new idea back then. And he had freedom of religion in his empire, and he did release a lot of people. I think he sent other people, other countries, other nations were released to go back home. So it wasn't just the Jews, but even if he released a dozen of them, God put it in his mind to do that. So why not do it to all of them? Send them back home. The Romans followed that. They said that Thomas Jefferson, there was a book written about Cyrus the king, and Thomas Jefferson had 2 copies of that book in English and Latin, and said he studied that book, and that was part of the foundation of the American Constitution. Everything that we do today is based a lot on what Cyrus did in 600 BC. So you can thank America's government for what he did there. So he's influential. There's several world leaders have studied this guy and studied the books that are written about him and follow his lead in the way the governments are set up.
And it's our God, it's God who stirred him up to behave this way.
Yep. You got to give God the credit. It's just no matter who does what, God gets the credit. So yeah, it's kind of ironic that I did read today that his grandfather is the one that got the vision. Your grandson's going to take over. So he takes and tells his general, I forget the name of the general, get the kid, kill him. So the general gets his lead man in the army, get the kid, kill him. The lead man says, "I can't do that. I have no way I'm going to kill that kid." He hauls him into the mountains and leaves him. Well, the tradition story is that when Cyrus was about 10 years old, they're playing a game, and one of the nobleman's kids playing a game with him. The kid wouldn't follow the rules or something, so he whacked him. He put a whooping on the kid and said, "That's unheard of, a shepherd boy putting a whooping on a nobleman's kid." And they took him to the king. Come find out, that's my grandson. So somebody, go back to the general, you didn't do what I told you to do. They took, the story goes, they took his kid, unknown to the general, and killed him, chopped him up, and cooked him. And then we had a big banquet and had the general come, and he had a big feast. He didn't know it. Then he brought in the kid's head and his hands. He said, look what you just, next time do what I told you to do. So the grandpa wasn't that, it was pretty wicked. As I had to read that, I was like, man, that was rough now, because you didn't follow my instructions. That's what, well, Cyrus was the grandson that didn't get killed. And it come to fruition that he did take over the country and disposed of his grandpa. I mean, got him back. He took over the empire that his grandfather had started. So the saying, the true, it was a true foretelling. It was, but the general, that had to be pretty rough. So, but so he survived, and he was a shepherd along with several other great men of the Bible. And so I wanted to bring that up. And so maybe we all need to start running sheep, huh? We'd be better people. Good people in the Bible had run sheep, right? And you know, sheep herding wasn't very popular in America when it started, back in the cattleman days.
Actually, in the New England states, there was some tens of thousands of sheep way before there was cattle and everything else. When the 13 state colonies were united, they raised mostly sheep.
Wow, I did not know that.
Well, I'm from New England, so
Yeah, okay.
old New England traditions, you know.
All right, so we're going to talk about Hiram of Tyre tonight a little bit and get started. I wanted to start this on Sunday, but we will just have to adjust ourselves, and we just started on Wednesday night. Hiram of Tyre. Now, Greg has brought up some things about Tyre on several couple of years ago about the geological things that happened to them, and it's still visible today. And about the fact that Tyre was a nation state on the coast and an island, about a half a mile off the coast, and said that God told him, you're toast. I'm going to overthrow you. You will be, and it's written down, they'll throw nets over they're going to be fishing over the top of Tyre before it's over. Basically how he told him. You're going to be thrown into the sea. Well, it took 300 years for it to come about, maybe more, that Alexander the Great attacked, and took him several months, and he tore the place down and threw it into the sea. But he used all the blocks and everything from the city and threw it into the sea, but he kept throwing the same place. He made a causeway, a dock, a ramp, all the way out to the island, so he could drive out to the island and take over the island. That's pretty smart. But it was, God predicted it. It's still visible from the satellite view. You showed the picture. You can see it. I've been looking at sandbars for the last 2 weeks. I just thought about it. You think about it. You can see these things when you look for it. And they showed divers diving on the things, the rubble that's down there. So it's ironic that God told you it was going to happen. It took a while, but there it is. It's today. And he said he would never be inhabited again. And it's still to this day not inhabited. So when God says it, it doesn't matter if you believe it or not, it's going to happen. You know, that was the bumper sticker that Rick used to talk about. He said, you see the bumper sticker on it, says, God said it, I believe it, and that settles it. But Rick says, it don't matter if you believe it or not. God said it, it's settled. So yes, this is Hiram. Now this guy was a decent guy, apparently. I don't think he was a great army king, a warrior king. He was a wheeler and a dealer, the way I see it, the way I see things. He was in a good position. The Phoenicians were famous for what?
For their skills.
Purple.
Purple, okay. I'm thinking how they got around.
They had craftsmen of every kind.
Ships, they were seafarers, they're famous for being on the ocean. And they had travel, trade routes in the ocean, going here and going there. That's where he made all his wealth. He's going places trading and bringing back and selling. He was in a major trade route on land, and yet he's got the ships. Phoenicians were famous for being seafaring people. Now that's, that changes everything. When you got that capability, you don't have to wait for them to go around. You can go to them. So yes, and that would explain why they had it on the coast. The city-state was on the coast, and the island was kind of like their fort. That was their place to run if things got bad. So he was from 980 to 947. That's 1,000 years before Christ. This is when this is going on. This is when David wants to build a temple, the temple of God. And God told him what? Not going to happen, no. Why wouldn't he let David build the temple?
Bloodshed.
Blood.
Because he was an army man and bloodshed and killed so many people.
Wasn't it God's army that he worked in? I mean, it just doesn't that seem kind of like, I did what you asked, now I'm getting punished. But he was a man of blood. He shed blood. He killed Goliath right there. We talked about him up there on the wall a couple of weeks ago. Yes, he was a man of blood. And God says, no, you're not building my house, not building the temple. Your son will build the temple, Solomon. But David, being the smart guy that he was, he contacted Hiram, and I tried to find out how far it was from Jerusalem to Tyre, and it told me it was 6,000 miles. I think I had the wrong Jerusalem. It's got to be maybe 200 miles, maybe, up the coast to Tyre. David says, I need cedar. Now, what area today is right where Tyre was then? What country?
It's Iran, isn't it?
No, that's a little more north. And they're in the news today, too.
You speaking of Lebanon?
Yes, Lebanon. All the cedar of Lebanon. This is what they're famous for. This is Tyre. This is the area. All those cedar trees. I'd love to see if their cedar trees are still there or anything like that. Because this was world famous cedar. He calls him up, I guess, okay, hey man, I need some cedar. I need wood prepared. I need wood. First off, Hiram's a pretty smart guy. He says, let me build you a house. I can bring the cedar over there. We'll bring my contractors, my builders, and build David a house. That's getting your foot in the door right there. Yeah. So he built David's house. David can't build the temple, but he can prepare the wood. He can prepare all the material, get it ready. I'm not going to live forever, so I'll have it ready for my son when I'm gone. That's what he's doing. And here's Hiram. I don't think he got paid the way he did get paid, but not the way he normally would have got paid. There wasn't a money exchange kind of deal. It was food.
Yeah, didn't they barter wheat and olive oil and stuff like that?
A bunch. Yeah, I've got that written down. If I did my math right, 3,600 tons of wheat per year. That's a few boxcars. And how many gallons? I didn't write the olive oil. Anyway, that was the food for his house. So yes, he didn't get rich off of that deal, but he made an ally. Sometimes it's better to not make the money and make an ally. The Hiram is right in the right place. He's got the right material. Here we go. We're going to build a temple. Now what God did Hiram worship?
He didn't worship God.
He didn't worship Jehovah God, no. He actually worshiped Baal. And we know about Baal, that was, there was an idolatry, a false god. When I think they sacrificed their children to them, I'm not, there was several of them that they had some crazy stuff like that. But that's what that's who he worshiped, Baal. So it's not like, yeah, Almighty God, I need to do that because he is God. I think he's just an ally. David's a man of war. David has won everything he's gone up against. It's a good man to have on my side if things go bad for me.
So it seems that he and David had a great relationship.
Yep.
He loved David.
Said he loved David. Yep. He was upset when David passed away. David died, and I think he only lived 53 years. Yeah. So I'm not sure at what point in David's life he came on the scene, but anyway, David died and Solomon took over, and Solomon and Hiram have got the same, we're going to do this. Now it's a definite go, and he sends his contractor people, for our language today, that's what he basically did. He has builders that specialize in wood, specialize in tile and stone, specialize in metalworks. I think there was one guy, his name happened to be Hiram also. And he was a specialist in all these things, and they sent him to oversee everything. This is a big step. That was probably one of the most majestic buildings in that time in the world. You think about all the gold. We talked about that before, about the amount of gold overlaid. Everything in that building was almost overlaid with gold. So that man would have been real busy. You know, it's not that huge a building, but it's just the impressiveness of it. And here's Hiram coming up with the equipment, the people, and the material.
I don't know what you looked it up. Did you look up the size? It looked like it was 90 feet high and 90 feet square.
I've got, the temple was cubits, I think it was 20 by 60 by 30 high. And that turns into, 30 foot by 90 foot by 45 foot tall. That's not that big. That's about the size of our auditorium here, if you think about it. It'd be taller, but yeah, it's not that big. But if it was overlaid with gold inside and just, well, what made it special?
It was God's house.
God made it special, yeah. This is to the living God. This is not to an idol. This is a temple for the sacrifice and the worship of a living God. The one and only living God. That made it special. But I don't think Hiram saw it that way. He just saw it as an opportunity to have a good ally. You know, you think about David and Solomon both talking to the man, but he doesn't show anything in the Bible that he became a believer in God Almighty.
David said that the temple really, he made it for the Ark of the Covenant as a footstool to God. I think that's what they said.
Well, he needed a big footstool. Yeah. But this is the man that we're talking about today, Hiram. He was located in Tyre. Later on, years later, it's overthrown. It's tore down. That's several years later. But they survived all that time. So, what makes the cedar tree so special?
Going back to what you were saying about him being a believer or not.
Yeah.
In 2 Chronicles, he openly praises Yahweh, saying, "Blessed be the Lord God of Israel, who made heaven and earth." And he talked about providing David with a
Okay.
son.
But we've said it ourselves before. You believe in God, but do you believe God?
Yeah, no, it was definitely a sign of respect for Israel, and he recognized that there was a God.
But then go home and worship them. That sounds like today. oh yeah, and go do what you want to do. And that's one thing that struck me about Hiram and the people, basically everybody over there. Yeah, there's a God in Israel, but we got one over here too. He's just as good. So it doesn't change anything. You don't change your mindset, you have not done anything worthwhile. You know, he believed God, he believed in God, but I don't think he believed God. He did not obey God. He didn't honor God as the only God. Because you go home and there's Baal still there. Okay, let's see. Yeah, even the historians like Josephus have talked about Hiram, different writers in the old long time ago, I mean 1,000 years ago. See Hiram's role in Israel's national growth. 7.5 years after coming to the throne, David moved his capital from Hebron to Jerusalem. That was about 1003 BC. David was 37 years old. David lived to be in his 80s, didn't he? I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So anyway, 37 years old. Years later, he comes upon the throne at Tyre, and apparently anticipating a good relationship. Hiram, the king of Tyre, sent messengers to David, and carpenters, and masons, and steel workers, iron workers, brass workers, and they built David a house. So and what kind of, I would say irritated, what bothered David about that situation?
That his dwelling place was better than what God had.
What is the dwelling place of God at this time?
The tabernacle.
Still in a tent. I'm living in a wooden house, and we got a tent out there with the Ark of the Covenant. That bugged him. You know, he wanted to build God a house. Well, God said no.
He told him if he wanted a house, he'd ask.
I built one. Exactly. So it's yes, sir.
I seem to remember that Cedars 11, when Hiram sent those through Jerusalem, that they were prefabricated. I think I've heard that. They were prefabricated, beams and columns and all that.
Yeah, because it was not supposed to be any hammer noise like that. It was basically that makes it a whole lot more difficult. I can't cut two 2x4s together and make them fit, you know, much less cut a tree down and make a beam and make it fit and put it. He must have built the thing over there and taken it apart and brought it over. Of course, for his building, I might have them confused, but it said that they cut the trees down and floated them to Israel area, out in the sea. You know, so they floated them down there. They still could have been prefabricated. They could have fabricated it off-site and brought it to the area where the temple would be, but it does state that there was not to be any hammering, chisel, any steel. I don't know if they had steel then. I think they did. They had iron chariots, they must have. But anyway, there was supposed to be no hammering going on. That's hard to do. You're trying to like put Tinker Toys together and not have to hammer to get it together. You don't remember Tinker Toys, do you?
I do.
Yeah. So that's amazing right there, the fact that they could do that, put it together, put it to fit, and then take it apart. Basically, I think they had to have pre-fitted it and take it apart and bring it over and then put it together there on site. Just, but the cedar, we mentioned the cedar. What makes cedar so? Even today, you want cedar in your closet. Two
reasons.
Tell me.
One, bugs don't like it.
Okay.
Two, it's got that real good sap in there that fights the weather. Doesn't rot
Okay.
as fast as other wood.
True. And I had two big 6x6 square cedar posts on my front porch. They rotted down. The bugs got in it. They will, but it's not. I don't think it was Western red cedar. I think it was Eastern. One is aromatic. Western cedar is aromatic, I believe, and the other is not. That's the one you walk into the cedar closet, you go, oh boy, this is cedar.
Right.
Yeah. The other one you walk in, oh, that's pretty, but I don't smell anything. So there's two different kinds of cedar, but I don't know which one he had, but he had a bunch of it. And this is the wood that was sought out. That and cypress. And that would both, cypress is saying again, this is very rock resistant. So yes, this is what he is doing. This is his beginning. And from there he had trade agreements with Solomon. In the past we talked about how much gold and silver Solomon had coming through the country. It was just astonishing. And Hiram was in on that, a lot of it. It was, they had areas that mined the gold, and they had shipping lanes, they had the boats. It goes back to the ships, the boats, the Phoenicians. That was their main thing, shipping on boats. And this is, even the cedar, we'll ship it to you right across the sea. Okay. So, okay, well, we got 5 minutes.
Randall?
Yeah.
Lebanon is still very proud of their cedars, their flag even has a cedar tree on their country's flag.
And I don't know if there's still cedar growing there. I should have looked that up. There's still cedar growing there. There's something about
Not
that
near
area.
as much as what it used to be, but they're still.
Kind of like the redwoods in California, not what they used to be.
Trees in Florida.
We can cut them down, we can sell it. Yeah. That's just what Hiram did. We can cut it down, we can sell it.
Now, are you gonna talk tonight or next week about the 20 cities?
The 20 cities, we can talk about that Sunday.
Okay.
Yes, that's a good thing to talk about. The 20 towns or 20 cities, yes. Was he being ungrateful?
Are you wanting me to comment? I don't want to steal your thunder.
Go ahead, steal my thunder.
Well,
First off, he's getting 3,600 tons of wheat every year. He's getting, how many? It was 20 cores. 20 times 60 is 160. No, I can't even do the math.
A lot.
How much?
It's a lot.
A lot of oil, olive oil, every year for his household. And then Solomon gives him 20 cities in the Galilee area.
that's right, Galilee.
Mm.
So they make the deal
Yeah.
and they trade lumber and gold for oil and wheat. Tremendous amount on both
Yes.
sides. That was the deal that they made. And of course, they made a treaty. There, what is this, chapter 5? Yeah, chapter 5 and verse 20 said they made a treaty after they made that deal and the transaction was made. In chapter, I get it mixed up, 9 I believe it is.
First Kings, yeah.
1 Kings 9, it says that Solomon, in verse 11, Hiram, king of Tyre, had supplied Solomon with cedar and cypress timber and gold, as much as he desired. King Solomon gave to Hiram 20 cities in the land of Galilee. But they had already made that deal. Verse 12, when Hiram came from Tyre to see the cities that Solomon had given him, they did not please him. Therefore he said, what kind of cities are these that you have given me, my brother? So they called the land Kabul to this day. Kabul meaning good for nothing. Very next verse. Hiram had sent to the king 120 talents of gold. That's what I mean by not making sense in the text. Not anything weird. Something weird could point to Christ, and we always want to have Christ on our mind. But when I say something weird, I mean, wait a minute. He didn't like the cities, and he still paid him 120 talents of gold. That's in the text strange. So, what I wanted to say, and I didn't want you, I was hoping you would say it, but if you're gonna make me say it, the cities were in Galilee. These despised cities in Galilee included.
Anything good come from?
Exactly. John chapter 1. When, I guess is it Philip telling Nathaniel? Nathaniel said, could anything good come out of Nazareth? Nazareth is one of these cities. Well, Hiram said no. These cities are good for nothing.
But he still paid for it.
But for whatever reason, he gives him 120 talents of gold. That doesn't make any sense, so it's got to point to the Christ. And in fact, something does come out. See, he tells Nathaniel, after he says, can anything good come out of Nazareth? He says, come and see. What did Hiram do? He came and saw. He didn't like what he saw. But Nathaniel, when he comes and sees, what's he say? You are the Son of God. Off the bat, he says. You are the Son of God. So this weird deal, they had already made a deal, they already made a treaty, they already done all the whole transaction, everything. And then there's this 20 city thing that's just out of nowhere. First of all, what is Solomon doing? Giving away the northern part of the kingdom.
And it's not his, it belongs to the Israelite people. That's my inheritance you just gave away.
You can't do that, and he almost did. So we see a crack in the armor of Solomon's wisdom, and that he's just going to give away deeded lots that God deeded to the people up north. And then the guy didn't like them, said they're good for nothing.
Yeah, that's
From then on, it was famous, nothing good comes from Galilee.
Do you think that's where that came from?
That's where it went viral.
Okay.
Right on.
They went viral back then. That's something to think about.
Right.
Okay. Well,
So that was famous. That him calling it Kabul was famous. It caught on. It sounded good. And so the people from up north, I bet, lived up to that reputation.